Are you aware that by being vegetarian, the animals still go through the same systems that you object to?
For sure. I definitely
Okay.
am aware of that, and that becomes a lot of my decision making.
Okay.
While I identify as a vegetarian, I personally
Yeah.
abstain from milk and butter. The only product that is preventing me from being able to identify as a vegan is that I do consume eggs.
Okay.
And that comes at the caveat with the understanding that chickens are not immune from these systems that I'm being critical of,
Yeah.
and that by participating in the egg industry, you are often able to still be participating in that exploitation.
Yeah.
And I think ideally, the goal that I would have for myself is to be able to have all of my food and my engagement with resources come from a place of not exploitation.
Thanks. So, my name's Rebecca. What's your name?
My name is Declan.
Declan, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, do you think that the powerful should have the right to oppress or exploit the powerless or the weak or someone because they're different?
No.
Yeah.
No, I do not.
Yeah. So we agree on that,
Mhm.
So what about when we think about the way that animals are treated? We use them for, food, clothing, entertainment, science. What do you think about that?
I definitely think there's a lot of similar systems at play that happen when we look at how people are oppressed and how
Yeah.
animals are oppressed. And I definitely, personally, I identify as a vegetarian.
Okay.
And I think a lot of my decision making with that was because of the treatment of animals in production facilities. I think I have my own perspective on the ethics of meat eating and relationships with animals in general. But I think the biggest problem that became a concern to me was the way that animals are treated as a result of capitalism and the industrialization of agriculture and all of these things. I think there's a certain quality of life that humans deserve, and I think spiritually, I believe that animals deserve a lot of that too. And I think scientifically, we've seen the capability of animals to feel things like humans can feel, and I think that we shouldn't maybe ignore that. We should take that into consideration.
Yeah, because if we were to put ourselves in their place, we wouldn't want to be treated like that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, like somebody just keeping you enslaved and doing all these random things to you and feeling almost like you're in a horror movie, a kind of hell that you're born into.
Absolutely.
So there's something I want to touch back on is that you talked about the oppression that is similar with humans. And so there is a term, speciesism. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. I don't know if I could super define it, but I believe what I know it to be is that humans believe that we are on a different level than animals. And I would say I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything predisposed to humans that make there be any sort of quote unquote law in nature that means that we have the right to exist the way that we do, and especially to supersede other animals. I think the world is the world, and for all we know, this might be the only place in the world, in the universe, where we're able to have all of these animals and species exist. And I do think it's unfortunate if one species takes over that at the risk of other environments and other communities. I think it's unfortunate because every other species is able to share this land, and I think humans are really one of the only species we've seen where their method of existence really comes at the detriment of other animals beyond the law of nature that has been established.
Exactly. So, you and I actually have a lot in common in those belief systems. So have you heard of veganism?
I have.
Okay, so I know you said you're vegetarian, but are you aware that by being vegetarian, the animals still go through the same systems that you object to?
For sure. I definitely am aware of that, and that becomes a lot of my decision making.
Okay.
while I identify as a vegetarian, I personally
Yeah.
abstain from milk and butter. The only product that is preventing me from being able to identify as a vegan is that I do consume eggs. And that comes at the caveat with the understanding that chickens are not immune from these systems that I'm being critical of, and that by participating in the egg industry, you are often able to still be participating in that exploitation. And I think ideally, the goal that I would have for myself is to be able to have all of my food and my engagement with resources come from a place of not exploitation. And I do believe that once I'm able to be in, frankly, it comes down to finances. And if I was in a financial position to be raising my own chickens or raising them humanely, I think that would be my ultimate goal. And I do know that even that method of having a relationship with eggs and your own chickens is still controversial to certain people with their own individual values of veganism. But I think we can ultimately agree that the egg industry is bad and that it results in exploitation and oppression. And that I think we can all make I think we're very fortunate to live in the age and day that we do, where I can go and buy plant-based butter and plant-based milk for like the same price at the store, you know? I think that's the easiest swap that a lot of vegetarians can do to get them even that extra step closer towards veganism.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really impressed that it's like eggs are the only thing that's holding you back from stopping the enslavement and exploitation of beings. And the thing is that even if someone treated you well, but they were using you however they wanted to, and you didn't have any freedom ultimately, and they had the power to decide what you did, how they used you, and when you died, would you be okay with that?
I definitely think it's a tough question, and I think it's tough because when we look at the situation with chickens and their ability to produce eggs naturally as part of their life cycle, I think it becomes more of a personal question at that point of what we view the natural ability of these animals. And I think I agree that there can be a lot of like greenwashing and normalization of oppression for humans and for animals, and we see that through like a lot of neoliberalization. There's like the very famous philosophy of the quote-unquote nice slave owner, and whether or not that is actually any sort of liberation. And in that situation, I would say it's not. You know?
Yeah, because ultimately it doesn't exist. You know, the animals don't want to be used, and even the chickens aren't the same chickens that are how they are in the wild. They've been taken and they're forced to produce eggs at such a rate that it's painful and it's taxing on their bodies. And so I think it comes down to how you want to, you know, treat the animals and what your belief is. If you believe that you shouldn't use other sentient beings for your own use when there's plenty of other options, there's different egg replacements and there's other ways to get protein. I know you know this already. And to me, I feel when I hear you talk, I see a vegan. I see a vegan.
I know.
And I see something holding you back. And I hope that you can empathize with the animals, because we know that they're sentient. Even chickens, you know, they have their own relationships.
Of course.
You know, they purr when they're happy and treated well. They have fun. They play. You know, so it's almost like we have to want liberation for everyone.
For sure.
You know, and so if I gave you some resources, I know you already like know a lot about. Whoops, where's my cards? Which pocket are they in?
I mean, definitely, I think looking into ways I can continue to reduce my egg consumption, especially, you know. I was not I didn't grow up vegetarian, you know, it's always been a process of, you know, first eliminating meat, then eliminating milk, then eliminating butter. I think having these conversations and always checking in with ourselves, you know, I would never say, oh, I'm never going to be a vegan in my life, you know? It might come to a point in which I'm able to have a relationship with myself and my diet and my health and all of these things where I can really align all of my goals with my diet. And I think everyone can be striving towards that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, especially in Portland, right?
Especially in
we
Portland.
have so many different vegan options.
Yeah.
In the restaurants and the bakeries and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go out to eat and stuff, it can be a little pricey, but it's pricey everywhere to go out to eat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of, am I doing this for the animals? You know,
Yeah.
do I want liberation of everyone? Because when you talked about it earlier, speciesism, it bleeds into all the other isms and biases.
100%.
And a lot of people don't recognize that, and you already have that association.
Yeah.
And so for me, I almost feel like if you don't become vegan, you're like a hypocrite to your belief system. And I feel a real genuineness about you, and so I feel comfortable saying that. Some people I wouldn't feel comfortable like saying, hey, you're being a hypocrite a little bit, but I feel like you come across very differently. And I appreciate your openness. I wasn't always vegan, for the majority of my life. I was not, and I wish I would have done it sooner, because once you completely do it, it's life-changing, and my values align,
Yeah.
But anyways, we're anti-animal use, and I'm going to give you our card. On the website, it has some different resources and a 3-minute video challenge. And we're on Instagram too. And if you ever want to come talk to us, you ever want to join us or anything.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being out here. And I think, at the end of the day, everyone is going to be at their own place with their belief systems and the relationships with nature. And I think all we can do for the first starting point to have those conversations. And I do think the biggest thing is, if someone is making choices, them being able to articulate why they're making those choices. And even if at the end of the day, we don't get the choices that we want out of the people that we want to talk to, I think having that conversation where they're even doing that internal investigation is, I think, unfortunately, right now with where we're at in society, that's the bare minimum of what we can hope to get out of people.
We can try, though. Change happens one person at a time.
Exactly.
And as much as I really, I don't want to admit that I can be a little bit misanthropic, or wait a minute, I don't know.
Misanthropic.
Thank you. It's hard.
Yeah.
And but I still believe that people, if we talk to them, we can break through, but we have to try.
Yeah.
So, if we throw up our hands and we become apathetic, then no change is going to happen. And it's going to it may take time, but we've seen a lot of major changes happen in history.
For sure.
So, that's why I don't give up. And I'll never give up for the animals. So
good. I think it's important to have people, at the end of the day, even if we can't ever get everyone to be 100% vegan, I don't think the fight should ever stop for people doing what they want. Especially, I think, the idea of the pendulum, where you push as far as you can go for full liberation, for full rights, for full freedom. The unfortunate reality, we might not end up there, but you can't give up, because when you push for that far, even if you then land halfway and you're a little bit closer, it's always getting that little bit closer. So.
Well, we don't know, because ecologically, people may be forced into more vegan choices, and they don't want to hear that right now. But you never know what's going to happen.
But I think it's really like what you say. Like, if people don't want that to happen, then they need to be looking at why they're making the decisions they make and the process that goes through that. Like my own values with how I want to talk to people about vegetarianism and veganism, and getting them to convert or change their habits. I think the first thing that I take with people is just think about why you're making the decisions, because so much of this is normalized where you're not consciously making a decision, even though you're making one, and it's like a default to eat meat, to buy meat, to even use other animal products. And the first step is that internal investigation. And I think even just talking and getting people to justify their beliefs, even if they don't agree with you, I think is something everyone should be practicing.
It makes them think. And do we condone violence, normalize violence? And that's basically what's happening all over the world. And incredibly to animals who are just disappeared from society, and but do me a favor and please talk to people about speciesism.
For sure.
And keep, like you said, you do talk to people about veganism, vegetarianism. I really appreciate you, and I
Yeah.
appreciate taking time to
For sure.
talk.
All right.
So
Well,
thank
good luck. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Have a good day.